cybersecurity threats, like having backdoors on their phone or ignoring the fact that your data is being collected and used by gigantic corporations to inform governments about your behavior and how you act, because they're getting something free for it or because they're told that it's normal. So we really connected people around the world and found all these wonderful, wonderful ways to help people succeed and to learn ideas that they may never have been introduced to otherwise. And so our mentor community has also been such a lovely way for people to make global friendships, which I think does wonders in terms of supporting the international economy, global education, becoming a global citizen, peace even, right? Because you know that democracies tend not to vote to go to war if they know people in that country. So it's a part of sort of being a part of a larger global community and feeling responsible.
Welcome to another episode of VPN Ranks. Today we are thrilled to welcome Isvari Maranwe, the visionary CEO of Yuvoice and co-founder of Dweebs Global. She is an award-winning cybersecurity attorney, a former physics researcher, and an Amazon best-selling author. Isvari is on a mission to empower others to become superheroes in their own right way. So welcome Isvari, it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I'm so glad I can be here.
So my first question for you is, you mentioned helping people become superheroes, right? So what inspired you to dedicate your life to helping others become superheroes?
Yeah, so ironically, it was just a really perfect nexus of everything that I had worked on before. I had been in journalism and the media. As an attorney, I had worked for a couple years with the US government to think about ways to get people more engaged in civics and in public service. And one of the things that we really learned a lot about was civic education and civic engagement. And then with Dweebs Global, I sort of accidentally co-founded a mentorship nonprofit that went viral, where we really helped a lot of people find jobs or take care of their mental health during the pandemic. What we realized was so many people around the world were missing their voice and were feeling like they couldn't be heard on traditional social media. They wanted a place to publish their stories. They wanted to cover news that wasn't covered in the traditional Western media. And they had all these ideas to make the world a better place, but they needed to find other activists to connect with to actually work on these projects so that it helped solve their loneliness and, sort of give them purpose while also doing something really great in the world. And we found also the friendships that those bonds created were lasting, because you were bonding with somebody for a third reason. It wasn't to network or to get anything out of it yourself. Combining all of those experiences together, I realized that we just kind of have this strong need for a new type of social platform, kind of returning to the essence of social and media online. We really believe everybody has the right to have a voice. We think an online free and democratic town square should be a human right, and it doesn't exist right now because so many current platforms have been bought out by advertisers or by data selling or by government or special interests. So all of those previous experiences combined sort of led me to create the platform Yuvoice, and we are so passionate about helping other people succeed, because as one person I can only impact so much of the world or work on so many local or community projects or even national projects, but together our entire generation, who I think are very, very active and want to find ways to change the world, can accomplish great things if we're empowered to do so.
You mentioned Dweebs Global, and we all saw that it has made a significant impact during the pandemic. So would you like to share some of the memorable stories or outcomes you have witnessed during this initiative?
Yeah, of course. So I think one of the best things about Dweebs Global was connecting so many different people around the world to help other people who were in completely different places or countries. A lot of traditional mentorship that's free, it's only offered through alumni communities in colleges, or maybe business groups or affinity groups within a country, or maybe within even a city, like people in London who work at nonprofits, or people who graduated from Georgetown. And we were able to connect mentees and mentors, and still are, from around the entire world. So somebody from India may actually know a lot about human rights or about technology or about how to land a programming job or be able to help with mental health support. And somebody they're helping might be in the United States or Kenya or Europe or France or something. So we really connected people around the world and found all these wonderful, wonderful ways to help people succeed and to learn ideas that they may never have been introduced to otherwise. And so our mentor community has also been such a lovely way for people to make global friendships, which I think does wonders in terms of supporting the international economy, global education, becoming a global citizen, peace even, right? Because you know that democracies tend not to vote to go to war if they know people in that country. So it's a part of sort of being a part of a larger global community and feeling responsible for the success and happiness of everyone everywhere, not just in your city or your country.
So, Yuvoice, you mentioned that it aims to be the world's largest pro-democracy civic engagement platforms. So, how do you envision it to transform in the current social media landscape, and what challenges you are anticipating?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So we really want to, while social media that exists right now is great, it's content creator media more than true social media. We really want to have an option that is kind of like a Wikipedia of social media. It's a nonprofit. The primary goal is to let people have a voice, to be educated, to connect with each other, and to accomplish tangible impact in the world. Not to become famous, sell their products, become an influencer, go viral. So there will still be platforms like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, etc., where the primary goal is to help influencers make money, and they're content creator platforms really today. We want to bring back the essence of true social connections and friendship, and then high quality media with no government involvement, no corporate corporations buying us out, no for-profit motives, right? So nobody here is trying to become a billionaire or try to sell your data or sell advertising, etc. Now, a lot of people realize they really want that. They're like, I wish there was a place where I could have a feed that's what I want to see. I wish there were a platform where I could have my voice heard and I'm not worried about suppression. I wish there were a platform that's equally interested in stories from Africa or Asia as they are from Europe and America. And that's what we want to create. And we're very globally driven. So our C-suite is from all over the world. And I think those are all positives. Those are all things that the market wants. Those are all things I think are going to go very well. One of the big challenges, of course, is built into the promise of what it is that we're building. We are not for profit. So it is very hard to compete with the for-profit world because you're surviving on donations. You have to find creative ways to raise capital. You have to support a volunteer team. So that can also be a challenge. And the bigger we grow and as we launch our initial product next year, etc., we're going to run into the challenge that potentially companies are going to take offense with this, right? They're going to want to buy us out. They might want to have a say in it. They might be upset if we're overtaking platforms where they have more control. And so those are all challenges we're thinking about from the get-go, because we'd be competing in a market as a nonprofit instead of a company.
So, without giving away the secret sauce, what role does AI play in building a positive community on Yuvoice? Especially, how does it help in fighting the toxicity present in other platforms?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are very committed to responsibly using artificial intelligence and not to exacerbating any of the complex moral and ethical issues that we can get to some other time. So we're very committed to that. But absolutely, we have sort of our secret sauce algorithm does bake into it ways to use machine learning to make sure that you're sort of seeing what you want to see on your feed. And the way we've thought about what people should see on their feed is a very intentional mix of things you might agree with and people you might know and want to support in real life, as well as ideas that you may not have been exposed to or opinions that are worth hearing about because you haven't heard about them. AI also helps a lot with fact checking. It can help a lot with knowing things to block, like if there are certain words, curse words, or attacks, racial attacks or abuse that we want to prevent on our platform. AI can definitely help with that as well. Rather than looking to advance AI, we're looking at using machine learning and existing systems to help us create a better product for users. We are not one of those sites that's trying to use users to create data that can train our AI and to therefore advance artificial intelligence in general, because that's something that I think it's an ethical conundrum. It's very complicated. I'm not sure that we would support that. So we're very much using AI as a tool to support the experience of users on the platform, not vice.
So you guys are not seeing it as a threat?
You mean to our platform? No, we do not think of artificial intelligence as a threat to our platform at all. We're a very people-driven platform. So luckily, or, luckily, I guess, we're not one of those jobs or platforms that I think AI would drive out of business, because we're very much about real people finding their voices and having a space to hang out. We are also pretty serious about preventing bots on our platform and preventing people who might not be real people from creating multiple fake accounts or from running AI as a fake user. And we also don't have the same incentives to do that other platforms have, because there are no financial rewards here. We're not letting people become gigantic creators to sell. Our priority is not to let them become gigantic creators to sell ads or sell products. There just is less incentive as well for bots and for that sort of activity.
Interesting. So, having worked with institutions like Pentagon and Department of State, what has been your biggest takeaway regarding the intersection of national security and cybersecurity?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think one of the frightening takeaways, at least for me, has been that people are very willing to sacrifice their privacy if you tell them that it's essential for national security purposes. And people are also willing to have a lot of cybersecurity threats, like having backdoors on their phone or ignoring the fact that your data is being collected and used by gigantic corporations to inform governments about your behavior and how you act, because they're getting something free for it or because they're told that it's normal. So today, for example, in the United States, every citizen has 1,500 pieces of data on them that is accessible by the NSA, the CIA, the government, and major corporations. And of course, major corporations is a worry. Like we have seen recently, things come out where companies are charging people tiered pricing because they look into your background and your search history and they know you can afford more. They're going to charge you more. There are things where companies have, unethically used that data to do things. There's obviously the case where governments have allegedly used some of that data to spy on people, to use your cameras in your phone or your computer to look at what you're doing, to, again, allegedly fight threats. And so what terrifies me is when we use the threat of terrorism or criminals to etch away at privacy and anonymity and security and your right to have your data secure online. People are willing to let it happen because they're told they're a bad person if they don't. They're told that if you aren't a criminal, you wouldn't care. And that is terrifying to the long-term security of people's information online and to privacy and to democracy, because a lot of the programs and platforms we see, like with Telegram or with Signal or with WhatsApp online, people are using them to speak out against their governments, or they're using them to have conversations they don't feel safe having with their real name. And it is terrifying when governments butt into that. And originally, I think in the United States, there was the illusion that at least in the US, you could do as you pleased. And so the results, I think, post-Snowden revelations and the way the government dealt with that or didn't deal with that terrified a lot of people who care about those things in the US as well. And of course, in other countries like China or Russia, you see even more surveillance, hyper surveillance on citizens and making sure the government's controlling all of their data. There are cameras in the streets tracking every single person and where they go, and that data is used to even disappear people or suppress dissidents, etc. And so that's probably the most important, terrifying, worrisome takeaway that I have in the NatSec cybersec space is just how little cybersecurity there is, because between the two, people will always prioritize national security, and that is terrifying.
So we have seen a trend of people using deepfakes on social media platforms, especially when the US elections is around the corner. So how are you or your platform is planning to combat with such threats?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think our platform is really focused on community notes, kind of like on X has community notes, right? But like community notes, community assessment of is this a deep fake or not, making sure that there are community fact checkers we are promoting who can go and be like, just so you know, this video is AI. This video has not been endorsed by a public media company. We're going to be making sure we have volunteers and staff who are dedicated to trying to prevent those things and to fact checking as much as we can. We also have a system where you really can't post videos directly to the main page until they go through some sort of verification process, a little bit more complicated, but you post in communities, and there are community moderators who edit and make sure to fact check some of the things that are going up. That being said, this is going to be a huge problem across all of media in the next 3 years. I think we're still at the point where, luckily for this election, AI and deepfakes are fake enough that people can sort of tell. It's in that uncanny valley. If you're careful, if you think this is something crazy, I don't think the candidate said it, or something seems a little weird with shadows or with the hands, people can sort of tell. But by next election, by 4 years from now, by election time for a lot of other countries around the world, they're going to be so good that you are not going to be able to tell whether or not it's real. And you're really going to have to find news sources you trust that are going to verify, was this something the candidate said, or was this a real video? And we're going to have to put a lot more faith in media institutions, traditional media institutions, that a lot of people don't trust anymore. But they're going to have to do the fact checking, and they're going to have to say, yes, I reported that video. That is what the candidate said. I was there when it happened. Or, people are going to get fooled. And I think that is going to be a huge, huge problem, and one that every media organization is going to grapple with over the next few years.
Sure, for sure. So I have seen your profile, and it was quite interesting. You have a very diverse area of roles, a pianist, and so having lived and worked across 3 continents, what's the most eye-opening cultural experience you have had?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, because I lived and worked a lot in different countries growing up. So from as young as I can remember, I was always in different cultures. So I never really had the traditional culture shock experiences growing up, like living in India versus living in the United States. I was like, that's the same. It's fine. I didn't notice the differences. As an adult, I can be like, those were very different experiences. But, a kid, you don't. One of the biggest culture shocks I had was actually moving from the west coast of the United States to the east coast for law school. So I went to DC for law school. And I remember within the first year, I was telling people, compared to living in Europe, compared to living in Asia, this is the biggest culture shock I've ever had, because DC is just so different from the Silicon Valley. People prioritize different things. They were very formal. People wear suits all the time. In California, they don't. It's very little culture shock things. But I think for me, one of the biggest things was just being aware of racism. I grew up in a little bit of a bubble, which isn't a good thing. In fact, once I experienced it, I was able to realize how many parts of growing up, also there were things that were bad. There were racist or sexist, but the experience in DC was, it was so segregated, and there was so much overt racism against Indian people, Black people, people of color in general, that was very much of a culture shock to me. And it was something I'd never experienced, luckily, growing up as much. And so it was definitely like dealing with that and just experiencing that and trying to make my way as a young Indian woman in a city where there were very few, and still are very few, young Indian women.
So how has it influenced your approach towards leadership?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think for me, the various places I've lived in around the world have made me realize how much misunderstanding and miscommunication between people is literally just cultural differences. And I've also always learned to challenge norms, because in other countries that may not be the norm. So when creating an organization from scratch, I think we all really tried to think about what should be the international norm. And we should always have a lot of leeway to understand when people don't fit that norm. So when people communicate in a way that might seem curt or might seem rude, we always give a lot of leeway to be like, hey, maybe they didn't mean that. Maybe that's how communication happens in their country. And so we have a very direct and friendly environment, because you have to be very forgiving. You don't know where people are coming from. And then also we've picked up little parts of different cultures around the world that are very good. And we try to let that inform our culture and our working culture and how we run our organization. So actually, it's really impacted my leadership style. I'm very different from a traditional American leader, because I don't think that the American corporate culture is very welcoming of different cultures at all.
So let's head to the last question of this session. So if you could pick one superhero power to have in real life, so what would it be and how would you use it?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Oh my God, I feel like there's so many different powers that are out there to choose from. I think for me it would be the ability, or it's just like even a slight like bonus to the ability to convince people, to change people's minds, to make them a little bit more empathetic, to make them be able to see the world through someone else's shoes. Maybe even if the superpower were just like literally being able to like put someone in someone else's body for a day and just experience like what they experience. I wouldn't want anything too crazy like invisibility or something with ethical problems. I feel like I get in my head, I feel like, is this okay? And I also, having a former career in physics, I always overthink these questions. I'm like, if I had the power of invisibility or flight, like what does that imply about the physics in our universe?
So how will you use it to further your mission?
I'd be like nothing. But if I could have a slight boost to my ability to just persuade people and to be a little bit more empathetic and see the world through other people's eyes, I think that would be great.
Okay. Thank you so much, Isvari, for giving us your time and sharing the wonderful experiences and journeys. So
thank you so much for having me. Your questions were excellent. I've been on a ton of different podcasts and shows, and you are like at the top. The questions are excellent. Your preparation was excellent. Just huge kudos.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop